Is my grandpa secretly Commissioner Gordon? What burger of the day do I want to eat today? How does Ben Grimm have children? How is Hope gonna get herself out of this one? Let's have a conversation.
Hello, welcome to Conversations with the Goob. That's me. Let's have a conversation. So this week's going to be a little different. I thought I would do a cooking type channel episode. So for my niece's graduation, cinnamon roll. You met her in some of our Gulps'N'Games episodes, but she's graduating. Well, she graduated technically because she actually was doing early college, but she's having her grad party, which in Michigan they call it an open house. That's probably going to be a whole nother episode. But so she's having a grad party, and they wanted me to make my famous Bourbon Hot Dogs for it. So I thought I would share the recipe and share how to make it. So I'm going to put the recipe at the end of the video. Just put a picture of it there and leave it up for like 5 minutes if you want to write it down. But I'm going to go through how to make it. And while I'm doing that, I thought, why don't you leave down below your favorite recipes for potlucks? If you don't know what a potluck is, it's when you go to a party and they say, hey, bring a dish to pass. Those are called potlucks because you're lucky of what's going to be in that pot. Some people love them, some people hate them. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Yeah. Let's make some bourbon hot dogs. Alright, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look over your recipe card first. Make sure you gather everything you need, all the instruments and ingredients. While you're doing that, though, you can throw your wok on the stove and get it heated. Because you don't want to put the cold meat into a cold pan and then heat it up. You want to heat up the pan first and then add the meat to it. So I have that at a 7 out of 10. That should be good. I might turn it up or down depending on how fast the weenies are cooking. But yeah, so we'll throw the weenies in the pot and get them cooking. So the original recipe calls for just 1 pound of weenies. That's just this one package. This isn't a lot. This is one person. I mean, maybe it was just me and Princess. This might be alright. I always use 4 packages and do 4 pounds of weenies. You know, I'm tripling it, but I'm only going to show you guys one setup. So I already have everything quadrupled on here. So, you know, originally it's a half cup of brown sugar, so it's going to be 2 cups of brown sugar for this. So I got my cup, I got my half cup, my quarter cup. I'm going to need teaspoons. I got a stirring spoon, I got a whisk. This is a nice one because when you push down on it, it spins for you. So it stirs it a lot faster. Got all that. So ingredients you're going to need, you need your weenies, your ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, and dry mustard. Now you cannot substitute regular mustard for the dry mustard. I know you think it sounds the same. It's not. It's different. You also need your bourbon. You're going to want to test your bourbon to make sure that your bourbon's good. So let's go ahead and always got to test things. That's bourbon, all right. Woo. So you start off by tossing your weenies into the pan. You're going to want to slice the package open and dump a little bit of the water out and then dump it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I got my weenies on the oven there, and I turned the heat down a bit because it looked like they were getting a little too hot. But got them all on there, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but I was draining all the sausage juice out of the packages because you don't want to have as little sausage juice in the skillet as you can when you're cooking it. Alright, so now while those weenies are cooking, you're going to get all your other ingredients mixed together. I'm not sure why, but they always say you want to mix your dry ingredients separately and your wet ingredients separately, and then combine them. So in this bowl, I'm going to put my brown sugar and my dry mustard in here, and then in this little bowl, I'm going to mix all of my wets together, and then I'll combine them. So I need 2 cups of brown sugar. Here's the thing with brown sugar that a lot of people don't know when it comes to cooking. This is not a cup. See, you need to pack it down in very tightly. So that would have only been half a cup. So you keep filling it in and packing it down until you get an actual cup. I need 2 of those. There's also light brown sugar and dark brown sugar. The difference is the amount of molasses sugar in it. It's kind of heartier, the darker stuff. I got light brown sugar just because that's what I always get, but my mom says she usually uses dark. Make sure you keep stirring your weenies so that the ones on the bottom don't burn. No one likes a burnt weenie. Got a little brown sugar in my bowl. Worcestershire sauce, you need a 1/4 cup. Ketchup, you need a 1/2 cup. Bourbon, you need 1 cup. Now it's been a while since we tested and made sure that bourbon was okay, so let's go ahead and give it another taste just to make sure that it hasn't spoiled on us since we last tested it. Since this one's going to be wet the whole time, I'm going to use this one, plus we are mixing the ketchup in, so I will do 2 1/2 cups of bourbon using the ketchup dry. That way my 1 cup stays dry for all the brown sugars I'm going to be mixing today. And you kind of wash a little more of that ketchup out of here, because it's hard to get all of it. Now we better test it, like I said. Yep, still tastes good. Whew. Then you need 2 teaspoons of dry mustard. Well, since that fell on the ground, I gotta rewash it. Alright, all my dry are mixed, all my wet are mixed. Now you're going to need to make sure that you mix this really well because the brown sugar is going to lump. Alright. Now this will separate a bit as your weenies are cooking, and you'll have to make sure you stir it up right before you pour it on. But make sure you get it nice and mixed, and you got your sauce. And let's just go ahead and get these weenies finished, and we'll add the sauce. At this point, you just keep stirring the weenies and cook them. You want them nice and brown on the outside, not blackened, and then you want them cooked all the way through on the inside. They are smoked, so they're pretty much pre-cooked anyways, fully cooked. So you just need them nice looking on the outside. Every now and then you can just slice one open, taste it. We're probably looking good here. Now it's been a while since you made sure that that bourbon was good. So why don't we go ahead and taste and make sure the bourbon's still looking good. You want to keep testing it and making sure that the bourbon hasn't turned. Yep, it's still good bourbon. So like I said, you're going to want to make sure that the sauce is mixed up again. And go ahead and pour that over top of your weenies. Now, once you get them all stirred in nicely so that every one of them's touched the sauce, the next step that you want to do is you're going to want to turn the heat up, not all the way to high, but like probably about 8.5, 9, and bring it to a boil. This is going to help to reduce the sauce, to thicken the sauce, and to boil off the actual alcohol content from the bourbon, leaving you with the nice smoky bourbon flavor. Now, I've tried this with whiskey, and it was a different flavor to it. I believe it was sweeter. Now, my mom actually uses top shelf bourbon, but I can't afford that. I got the cheap Old Crow. I think it gives the same flavor to the dogs. So you're going to want to bring that up to a boil and let it boil for a little bit, because if you turn it down too quickly, it's not going to simmer properly. I usually let it boil for about 10-15 minutes. Until you actually see the sauce itself start to thicken some. because otherwise it doesn't thicken. While you're doing this, this is a good time to get out your crock pot and get it warm, because you don't want to put the hot weenies into the cold crock pot. That could break the ceramic. So I'm going to go ahead and get that out and get that warmed up. I don't think I'm going to get all 3 batches into that container, so the last batch will just be in a different dish, and we'll add them in as we run out at the graduation party. Alright, so it's been about 10 minutes. Boiling's going pretty good. I might lower the heat a little bit, but I actually think that the simmer level it's at is nice for what we want. In the long run, sometimes when I cook these, I do have to bring it back up to a boil for a bit and then back down to a simmer. You're going to simmer it for a good 20-30 minutes. You want it to have a consistency like molasses, if you've ever seen molasses. Or honey almost. Not as thick as honey, just slightly less thick than honey. You don't want maple syrup consistency because it won't stick to the dogs as nicely. But if you go too long, it'll actually caramelize and they'll become candied weenies. Really? Alright, but yeah, they'll be candied. Which might be good. I've never done it that way. It'd be hard and chewy. But yeah, so I think I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit and continue to let them simmer. As they're simmering, you do want to stir them occasionally, but you don't have to stir them as constantly as I was while they were boiling, because they won't burn in the bottom as easily when it's at a lower heat. I actually think they're pretty good where they're at, but not like done, but like for simmering. So I'm going to go ahead and let these simmer, and I'll come back in a minute. So actually, I've noticed that some of these dogs are splitting, and I've never seen that happen before with these. One of these batches are a different brand than the other 3. So I'm wondering if maybe it's those ones that are cracking, because a lot of them aren't, but never seen that before. That's different. So I've only been simmering them for about 10 minutes, and they actually look pretty good. The sauce is coming out pretty decently thick. It's not going to be the molassesy thick that I was mentioning. It's a little thicker than maple syrup, but it thickens upon while it sits in the pot, and then it'll thin after you actually bring it to the party. But while it's thickening, it'll stick to all the doggies. You can pull them up and look, and as long as it's sticking to them nice and thickly like molasses, then those are good, and the rest will thicken up as it sits in. And the rest of them will thicken up as it sits in the crock pot. So I'm going to go ahead and dump these in the crock pot. I have thought, though, it's been... I was thinking, though, it's been a bit since I last tested that bourbon. So why don't we go ahead and make sure that that bourbon hasn't turned. Yep, that's still a good bourbon. Alright, so again, that's how you make bourbon hot dogs. I'm going to leave the recipe card up at the end for a few minutes for you if you want to write it down. Every time I make it, maybe I should have made the first batch and recorded the second batch, because things always turn out differently. I remember things differently. My mom always says to bring it to a boil and only leave it there for a few minutes and then turn it down and simmer for like 30-35 minutes. That's what her old directions say to do. I found that you don't get a thick enough sauce if you do it that way. If you leave it on a boil for about 15 minutes and then turn it down to a simmer, it caramelizes that sauce in a way where it's thick enough but not too thick, and then the simmering helps to bring it down so it's not, and it doesn't caramelize and turn hard. And you only need to simmer it. I only simmered it for about 10 minutes. I boiled it for about 10-15 and then simmered for about 10. As long as you keep an eye on it, if you're boiling it and things start to look like it's getting a little too thick, turn it down quickly. and let it rest. If you bring it down and it's still too thin while it's been simmering for over 20 minutes, it's been simmering for too long, bring it back up to a boil again. Because it doesn't need to be simmering for as long as the old directions say to do. So it only took me, like I said, about 15 minutes, 10-15 boiling and about 10 simmer, maybe 10 simmering, and then they looked good. My mom said that the reason why they split is because if they get a little hot from the sauce, it does cause the skin to split. Like if you're grilling a hot dog, usually wait until it's split before you know it's done. Those ones, the sauce will soak up on the inside a lot more, so they'll be pretty flavorful. But it doesn't ruin them, obviously. But you know what? It has been a while since I tested that bourbon. Just gotta make sure that bourbon doesn't go spoiled on you, so those dogs stay good. So let's go ahead and test that one more time. Yep, that's still good bourbon. And remember, you don't need to have superpowers to be a hero. Also, please drink responsibly. You must be 21 to drink in the continental United States. I don't know what the ages are anywhere else. I don't know why I say continental. I think it's all the U.S. But so don't test the bourbon if you're under 21. You can still cook it because the bourbon is cooked out. Easy. You can eat these, but make sure you have your parents' permission before you do that. Then, because they might wonder why their bourbon disappeared. They might not believe that you made cocktail weenies.